The 3 suns never set at the same time on Helion-7. That's what kept me alive for 4 months and what almost killed me in the end. I crouched by the crystal outcropping, filtering water through the mesh into my canteen. The metal was warm, always warm. My mother's initials were etched into the side. E.S. Eleanor Santos. The only thing she left me besides a half-decoded map and a crew that didn't come back. The canteen was nearly empty. The crystals were cracking faster now, hairline fractures spreading like veins. I had maybe 2 days of water left if I rationed. Less if the solar storm everyone feared actually came. That's when I heard it. A low rumble like distant thunder, except there were no clouds on Helion-7. Just 3 suns circling each other in an eternal dance, casting overlapping shadows that twisted and vanished as quickly as they formed. I turned. The shadow tiger stood 20 meters away, exactly where no shadow should exist. 2 suns blazed behind me, one to my left. The ground should have been flooded with light. But there it was, a silhouette of liquid darkness, muscled and massive, with curved horns rising from its skull like twin crescent moons. It didn't move, just watched me with eyes I couldn't see but could feel. I grabbed my canteen and ran. That night, if you could call it night when 2 suns still burned on the horizon, I sealed myself inside the emergency shelter, an inflatable HAB unit the crew left behind with a note. 2 weeks of supplies, rescue en route, stay put. It had been 17 weeks. I pulled up my audio journal, the only conversation I'd had since they left. Day 118, saw something today, probably heat exhaustion. The medkit says I'm dehydrated, but I've been rationing. Crystals are failing. If the storm comes, I need to find the refuge Mother marked on the map. Problem is, half the coordinates are corrupted, and now I'm seeing things. I looked at the canteen beside me. The etchings caught the double sunlight filtering through the HAB wall, coordinates beneath her initials. I'd traced them 1,000 times. They pointed west, toward a rock formation the crew had dismissed as geologically unstable. My mother had been a xenogeologist. She didn't make mistakes about rocks. I checked the storm tracker, a battered tablet that had survived better than my hope. The projection was clear and terrifying. 48 hours until the 3 suns aligned in what the locals called the scorch, a triple eclipse that superheated the surface to over 800 degrees Celsius. Nothing survived it above ground. Not the crystalline formations. Not the silicon-based lichens that clung to the rocks. Not me. The shelter wouldn't hold. It was rated for 2 weeks of normal conditions, not a scorch event. The thermal shielding would fail within the first hour of alignment. I'd read the specs a dozen times, hoping I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. I pulled up the crew manifest on the tablet, scrolling through faces I'd memorized. Captain Mendez, who'd promised my mother he'd keep me safe. Dr. Yuki, who'd taught me how to identify water crystals by their refraction patterns. Chen, the pilot, who'd let me sit in the co-pilot seat during the descent and told me stories about his daughter back on Europa. They'd left so quickly. The solar readings spiked, and they had 6 hours to reach minimum safe distance. My mother had been in the deep survey cave when the alarm sounded. They sent me back to camp to get her equipment. By the time I returned, the ship was gone. Emergency protocol, they said over comms. She'd ordered them to leave. She'd meet me at the backup site. She never did. The crew thought I was following on the rover. I thought she was already aboard. By the time anyone realized the mistake, they were too far to turn back without killing everyone. They promised to return after the storm passed, sent supply drops, left me the HAB and the emergency beacon. 4 months of promises, 4 months of silence after the first 3 weeks. I'd stopped believing in rescue around week 8, started believing in survival instead. The shadow tiger returned at dawn, or what passed for dawn when 1 sun rose while 2 still hung in the sky. I watched from inside the HAB, my hand on the plasma cutter I'd been keeping charged. It sat at the same spot as yesterday, the rock formation where the shadows intersected during the brief window when 2 suns dipped low enough to create overlapping darkness. It didn't hunt, didn't prowl, didn't even seem interested in the protein bars I'd thrown out earlier as a test. Just sat, watching my shelter, until the 3rd sun climbed high enough to flood the area with light. Then it vanished, not running, not fading. Just gone, like it had been a trick of angles and exhaustion. I ran a scan with the tablet's thermal sensors. Nothing. No heat signature, no electromagnetic distortion, no biological readings. The spot where it sat was the same temperature as the surrounding rock. It was as if the creature didn't exist at all. But I'd seen it, felt its presence like a weight in my chest. I checked the medical scanner. Hydration at 62%, core temperature slightly elevated, no signs of neurological damage or hallucination markers. I was seeing something real or something my equipment couldn't detect. Over the next 18 hours, I tried everything. Set fire to a fuel canister to scare it off, filling the air with black smoke that should have sent any living thing running. The tiger sat and watched the flames until they died. Blasted the distress klaxon at maximum volume, a sound designed to be unbearable to most carbon and silicon-based life. It didn't even flinch. Threw rocks at the spot where it appeared, each one passing through the space it occupied and clattering on stone beyond. Nothing worked. Every time the light shifted to allow shadows, there it was. Patient. Waiting. Watching. The crystals were cracking audibly now, sharp snaps like breaking bone echoing across the plateau. I collected what I could, filtering frantically, but the yield was dropping. Half a canteen. That's all I managed in 6 hours of work. I had maybe 18 hours of water left. The storm was 28 hours out. I opened the map again, overlaying it with the satellite data I'd cached before the crew left. The rock formation the tiger always stopped at, it aligned perfectly with my mother's corrupted coordinates. The refuge was there. Had to be. She'd spent 3 months surveying this region, mapping cave systems and underground aquifers. If anyone knew where to hide from a scorch, it was her. But I couldn't search with that thing stalking me. Couldn't risk the trek while carrying my only water. And I definitely couldn't navigate the unstable terrain if I collapsed from dehydration. I was trapped by my own fear of something I couldn't explain. That's when I noticed the pattern. I'd been logging every appearance in my journal, noting times and sun positions out of sheer boredom. When I pulled up the data, the pattern was obvious. The tiger didn't just watch me, it watched the horizon. Always the same direction due west, toward the formation, toward the corrupted coordinates. And every time I moved toward my shelter's west exit, even just to check the seals, it stood. Not aggressive, not threatening, anticipatory, like a dog waiting for a walk it knew was coming, like it was waiting for me to follow. I sat on the hab floor, canteen in hand, and did the math. 12 hours of water left if I didn't sweat too much. 26 hours until scorch. 6 hours to reach the formation on foot if I maintained pace and didn't collapse. The refuge had to be there. But if I went, the tiger would follow. Or worse, be waiting. Unless the tiger wasn't a threat. Unless it was trying to show me something. I pulled up every piece of data my mother had left behind. Her survey notes were thorough, clinical, but buried in the personal logs was a single entry that made my hands shake. E's birthday today. Wish I could be there. Set up the contingency site yesterday, sealed it with the genetic lock. Only she can access it. Only she can see the guide. If something happens, if I don't make it back, the Guardian will find her. The Guardian. I stared at the canteen. My mother's initials, her coordinates, her promise that someone would come back. No one had come back. But something had found me. I made a choice that would have horrified every survival instructor who'd trained me. Every rational part of my brain that screamed about dehydration and death. I unsealed the hab, feeling the wall of heat hit me like a physical blow, and walked 20 meters into the brutal light. I placed the canteen filled with my last 10 hours of water, every drop I had left directly in the spot where the tiger appeared. Then I backed away to the hab entrance and waited, plasma cutter in hand, ready to run or fight or watch my last hope evaporate under 3 suns. The shadows shifted as 2 suns dipped in tandem, their light carving dark angles across the plateau. The tiger materialized like smoke condensing into muscle and bone, like darkness remembering its shape. It approached the canteen slowly, each step deliberate, massive paws making no sound on stone. It sniffed the canteen, looked at me. For the first time, I saw its eyes. Not organic, not reflecting light like a biological creature's should. Glowing soft blue, like bioluminescent algae in deep oceans. like cockpit displays in darkened ships, like code running in the dark spaces between stars. It lowered its head and drank. Every drop. I watched my survival evaporate into a shadow creature I couldn't explain. The stupidest gamble I'd ever made, the most desperate. Then it stood, turned west, and began walking. It stopped after 10 meters. Looked back. Those blue eyes found mine across the distance, waiting. I grabbed the emergency pack medical kit, the tablet, a thermal blanket, and followed. The walk was brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. The heat pressed down like a physical weight, even with 2 suns partially set. The air was thick, hard to breathe, tasting of minerals and desperation. My vision swam after 20 minutes. My legs shook after 40. I'd given away my water the stupidest, most desperate gamble I'd ever made, and now my body was sending urgent warnings with every step. The tiger moved slowly, adjusting its pace whenever I stumbled. Its gait was strange. Sometimes it seemed solid, corporeal, leaving prints in the dust. Other times it was translucent, the landscape visible through its form, but always moving west, always checking that I followed. Twice I fell, my legs giving out completely. Twice it stopped, sat like a patient sentinel, and waited until I stood again. The second time, I stayed down for 5 minutes, certain I couldn't continue. The tiger simply watched, no judgment in those impossible eyes, no urgency, just presence. I stood because staying down meant death. The tiger resumed walking. It wasn't hunting me, it was guiding me. The realization gave me enough strength to continue. The rock formation rose ahead, jagged and dark against the blazing horizon. Up close, it was more impressive than the satellite images suggested, a twisted spire of volcanic stone, 30 meters high, covered in the same symbols I'd seen on my mother's survey maps. Xenoglyphs, she'd called them. Evidence of an ancient civilization that had learned to survive the scorch cycles. The tiger led me to a fissure I'd never have seen on my own, a crack in the stone barely wide enough for a person, hidden by an overhang that satellite imaging would have missed completely. The entrance was marked with a small symbol etched at knee height, my mother's survey tag. The 3 suns were aligning. I could feel the heat spiking, the air shimmering like liquid, the stone beneath my hands growing hot enough to burn. The temperature gauge on my tablet read 187 degrees Celsius and climbing fast. Minutes left before the surface became uninhabitable. The tiger stepped aside, its form flickering like a bad hologram. I squeezed through the fissure into blessed darkness and relative cool. The cave opened gradually, a narrow tunnel that widened after 10 meters into a chamber 40 meters deep. Emergency lights flickered on as I entered, motion sensors, still functional after who knew how long. The walls were covered in symbols I recognized immediately, the same markings etched on my canteen, the same xenoglyphs from my mother's research, a language she'd spent years trying to decode. Supply crates lined the walls, each marked with Planetary Survey Corps insignia. I opened the nearest one with shaking hands. Water purification tablets, sealed water containers, enough for months. The next held freeze-dried food, medical supplies, even entertainment tablets loaded with books and music. Everything someone would need to survive alone for a very long time. My mother had built this, stocked it, prepared it not just for herself, but for me. A hollow emitter hummed to life in the center of the room, pulling power from somewhere deep below. My mother appeared, full-sized and realistic, the kind of high-end AI that cost more than most survey missions' entire budgets. Not a recording. An interactive construct, sophisticated enough to recognize me. Her face softened when her sensors locked onto my features. Eleanor, if you're seeing this, you found the refuge, and you saw the Guardian. I looked back toward the entrance. The shadow tiger sat silhouetted against the brightening light outside, its form more solid now in the dimness of the cave. My mother's AI continued, moving as she spoke, just like she had in life. The Guardian is a defense projection, keyed to our family's genetic marker. Took me 2 years to develop it, combining xenotech from the ruins and our own holographic systems. Only you can see it, Eleanor. Only you. Anyone else looking at the same spot would see nothing, just shadows and light playing tricks. The image flickered slightly, a reminder it wasn't real. I built this refuge when I surveyed Helion-7, knowing the scorch cycles would make surface habitation impossible long-term. The official colony assessment was positive they wanted to establish mining operations, but I knew better. Every 127 days, the suns align. Every 127 days, the surface becomes hell. No amount of shielding would protect long-term habitation. She gestured to the cave walls. The xenoglyphs tell the story of the species that lived here before. They survived for thousands of years by building deep refuges, triggered by genetic locks. No technology we could steal, no doors we could force. They only opened for those with the right biological signature. I adapted that system, created a key. She looked at where my canteen would be. The canteen is the access key, its coordinates led you here. But the Guardian, it only appears when you're alone, when you need guidance most. I programmed it to wait for specific conditions: isolation beyond 70 days, stress markers in the environment, and signs you were searching for the refuge. It would appear then, and only then, to guide you home. The image stepped closer, even though she wasn't real, would never be real again. I meant to tell you all this before the mission, but the scorch came early, 15 days ahead of projections. The crew evacuated. I sent the message to bring you aboard, but the comms relay failed in the electromagnetic surge. They thought I'd abandoned you to save myself. They thought you were delirious when you reported seeing something following you. Her expression softened with something that looked like grief. You were never abandoned, Eleanor. You were chosen. The refuge was always yours. The Guardian was always watching. I just needed you to trust what others couldn't see. To follow the impossible. Because sometimes survival means believing in shadows. The hollow began to fade, its power cycling down. The canteen opens everything. Use it. Live. And know that I never left you behind. I left you a way forward. She disappeared. I stood alone in the silence, my mother's absence somehow heavier than it had been for 4 months. I turned to the tiger. It watched me with those blue, impossible eyes, patient as stone. I pulled the canteen from my belt, empty now, its water given in trust. There was a panel beside the emitter, canteen-shaped, with a small display showing the Santos family crest. I pressed the metal cylinder into the slot. It clicked home. The entire cave hummed to life. Life support engaged with a sound like breathing, air circulators pulling in oxygen from deep underground vents. Water purifiers activated, drawing from an aquifer my mother had mapped months before. Lights brightened throughout the cave, revealing the full scope of what she'd built, not just a shelter, but a home. Sleeping quarters, a lab, a communications array, and a long-range beacon that began transmitting the moment the system came online, a rescue signal my mother had pre-programmed, waiting for the key that only I could provide. The display showed it broadcasting on multiple frequencies, emergency channels, survey corps bands, even commercial shipping lanes. Someone would hear it, eventually. The Guardian stood, walked to me on silent pause, and pressed its massive head against my shoulder. Warmth radiated from it, even though it was made of shadow and light and code my mother had written in the darkness. Then it padded to the entrance and lay down, facing out toward the 3 suns as they merged into a single blazing point of light. Outside, the scorch began. Through the cave entrance, I could see the landscape transform. The temperature spiked past 800 degrees. The silicon lichens sublimated instantly. The crystal formations I'd been harvesting melted, flowing like water. The very air seemed to ignite, heat distortion making everything ripple and dance. Inside, I had water flowing from purifiers, food enough for years, medical supplies, a bed that deployed from the wall with actual sheets, and a shadow tiger that had saved my life by waiting for me to trust the impossible. I sat beside it, watching the world burn, and started to cry. Not from fear or grief, but from relief so profound it hurt. I wasn't alone. I never had been. My mother had reached across death itself to guide me home. 3 weeks later, I'm still waiting for rescue. But it doesn't feel like waiting anymore. The Guardian stays at the entrance most days, a silhouette against the heat when the suns align, a more solid presence in the cooler periods when shadows are possible. Sometimes I sit beside it, watching the suns dance their eternal circle. I've started recording again, updating my journal with something other than survival calculations. Day 127. I used to think survival meant being strong enough to make it alone, that asking for help was weakness, that trusting anything I couldn't explain was foolish. But I was wrong about all of it. I scratched the tiger behind its horns. The sensation was strange, sometimes solid, sometimes like running my hand through cold mist. It rumbled, a sound like distant thunder, like the moment before rain, like contentment in a language older than words. Survival is recognizing who stays even when they come from the shadows, even when no one else can see them, even when trusting them means giving away your last drop of water and hoping they'll lead you somewhere better. The Guardian's eyes glowed softly in the cave's dimness. I'd learned to read its moods over the past weeks. This was its content expression, its at-peace look. The crew will come eventually. The beacon is strong. And when they do, I'll have a story they won't believe. About a girl, 3 sons, and a shadow tiger that taught her the difference between being abandoned and being chosen. Between being alone and being guided by someone who loved her enough to build a guardian that would outlast death itself. I pulled up my mother's AI again. I could activate it once per day without draining too much power. Tell me again about the xenoculture, I asked. The ones who built the genetic locks. She appeared, smiling the way she had when I was young, and asked endless questions about her work. They understood something we're still learning, Eleanor. That the strongest shelters aren't built from stone or steel, but from trust. They locked their refuges to bloodlines because family was sacred. Because the knowledge of survival should pass from parent to child, written in the body itself. You did that, I said. You wrote survival into my DNA. I gave you the key, she corrected gently. You had to choose to use it, had to choose to trust. That was never something I could program. Outside, the suns burned in their endless cycle. Inside, for the first time in 4 months, I felt something I thought I'd lost. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope of rescue, but the deeper hope that comes from knowing you're not facing the darkness alone. The Guardian shifted beside me, its form flickering between solid and shadow. My mother's AI smiled and faded, conserving power. The cave hummed with life support. The beacon transmitted my location to anyone who might be listening. And I wasn't alone. I never had been. Some Guardians come with badges and weapons, some come with ships and promises, and some come from shadows built by a mother's love and a daughter's need, waiting patiently for the moment when trust becomes possible. Mine had horns and blue eyes and infinite patience, and it had led me home.